Everybody for jumping in. Thank you for joining Cafecito Chat. So today's topic that we have online is resumes. What are they? Are they still being used? What you should include? And what is a resume, right? So it's an interesting question. What should you include? How can you tailor the resume? And how do you pivot when you actually want to pursue maybe a change in career, maybe a different position somewhere else? Maybe you're a design engineer, maybe you're a programmer, and you want to go into more of a program management or a managerial role. So how do you do that, right? There's different styles of resumes. So I'm gonna go over to Paul Montoya. I know that you've been in the industry for a couple of years, quite a few years now. You've seen how you personally, your resume started off as a standard resume, one page, and then all of a sudden over the years, with all the experience, do you have a 2, 3 page resume? Do you keep it to one page? And from one company to another, how do you pivot, and what do you know how to highlight? Can you provide some
Yeah,
insight, sir?
yeah. So that's an interesting topic. You know, the resume. I was just in a meeting at ASU the other day and we were doing a mentor workshop, and the presenter, one of the students, met with the career advising at the engineering college, and the college gave them sample resumes, and she was showing them up on the screen. And the first thing that jumped out at me, again, this was a recommendation from the college, and it had the high school on the resume. And the first thing I said, I told them I couldn't get past the formatting. I told them their format, having attended the last couple of ship conference and using this exact format, I go, your format is from the 90s. And, they're no longer using summary statements and this and that. And then I told them, I go, I don't know, I feel like the high school is not appropriate. And the only reason the younger classmen put high school on the resume is because they need a filler. And I said, look, if you need a filler, then go go to Google's website and knock out a 1 hour certification and add a certification section on your resume, and there's your filler. And I'll go the white space. And it's interesting now too, just to complete that thought, is now with the company I'm working for, we do contingency staffing, and and uh, and the recruiters, there's like 15 recruiters here, and I have to vet the resumes. You know, they vet them, but then they show them, give them to me for like final say. And all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, this resume's nice. I'm looking at these resumes. They have exact same skill set I have, infrastructure, professional services, that kind of stuff. And I'm looking and I'm like, wow, these things are like block formatted, bookends and everything. The alignment's perfect, all this stuff, the experience, just seeing stuff, something like that. And at the end of the day, I feel like you need multiple types of resumes. I was giving advice to the ship students, and we were just brainstorming, and I came up with this idea, and I said, have you ever seen a lawyer's resume? And I'd be interested to the folks in the room. A lawyer's resume, or like a real estate agent, they have their picture. It looks totally different. And by the end of the meeting, one of the students Googled the format, and they'd say, hey, Paul, is this what you're talking about? And they pulled up one of these formats. I go, yeah, that's exactly what I'm talking about. The resume looks personable. And what intrigues me about the ship conference is I almost thought that you should have that type of personable resume on one side. And then depending how the recruiter reacts, flip it around and have your engineering resume on the other side. And then in addition to that, if you go to their website, and they're going to be, so that's the one pager, front and back. And then if you go to their website, then you have, potentially a 2 pager where you have all the keywords, an integration of the job description, et cetera, et cetera. So you definitely need, there's definitely an avenue or a conversation to be had about having multiple resumes. I'm kind of curious what the audience thinks about using a lawyer type of looking resume where it has your picture. And the reason I say that is at the end of the day, you empathize, you put yourself in the recruiter's shoes. You're IBM, you just collected, or Apple, you just collected, Lord knows how many resumes. And now you have a pile, you directed a lot of people to your website, but you're like, oh, and you have your chicken scratch notes on the front, on the back, and you don't remember who you spoke to. Now you find this person, oh, look, there's so-and-so. There's Paul's picture. I now immediately remember the conversation, turn it around, and you have the engineering format that he can submit. But I think, and I was telling these ship students at ASU, I was like, my gut feeling tells me that this feels right. Give them the resume that has your photo on it, flip it around, and have your engineering format just in case, and see what happens.
It's an interesting thought there, Paul. I think to your point, the '90s version is something. I see your hand up, Lourdes. I'll get to you after this comment. I see your point in regards to how, at least in engineering, we've been pigeonholed into the '90s format for the most part, even up to now. I think a lot of that has to do with the automatic tracking system being utilized by large corporations, predominantly DoD, in regards to mechanical, electrical, computer science individuals that want to go to the big Lockheed, the big Northrop Grumman, the big Boeing, the big Raytheon. That's what the format's laid out for. If you have a QR code in your resume as you submit it, the ATS will kick it out. It won't even pass that filter. So that's the problem. And a lot of students are struggling for time, so they only have one version, which is that '90s format version, the more common one that you see, the black and white, the one that still has the objective or the summary listed out, the one that has the work experience, and just really straightforward, very, very, very succinct, very visible, straightforward type of thing. But I like the question that you posed. Is this something that we could definitely consider? Possibly, I have told students have a different version with your QR code, with your email address, with the URL for any GitHub sites that you have that you want to show videos or anything like that. When you're passing it around in person. But when you actually submit it online, have the normal cookie cutter standard resume that stands out and make sure that you submit that online so it passes the ATS. But I'm going to shift over to maybe Lourdes. You have your hand up, so we'll start with you and then we'll head over to somebody else. Lourdes?
Yeah, I think what Paul was saying was pretty interesting because I saw that new format shift a few years ago, maybe like 5 years ago, but it was mainly software engineers.
Right.
It was very much a picture, like line your skills in a different way, but I haven't seen the shift happen in mechanical or electrical. It always seems to be kind of the standard cookie cutter one, but also I'm thinking it's because like the way recruiters are also trained and when they're looking for some skills, like they're like, okay, this person stands out. It's easier for them to find it. I don't know if the industry is going to shift over to more like personable ones, but I do like your idea of having double-sided though. I do like the idea of the picture and the engineering resume in the back. It's just more of like, will they turn it around or do they realize it's there? So like kind of just making a comment about it or something, you know? But it's a cool, interesting idea though. I like it.
Thank you, Lourdes. Great insight. We have somebody from Raytheon, Melissa. Melissa, I don't know if you can open your mic and provide some insight, or if you have any questions about resumes, you can definitely ask that here as well.
Oh, yes. So I also want to piggyback off of what Lourdes was saying, that I think it'd be really helpful to have a picture connected when speaking to those recruiters. In terms of the resume, I saw someone had a question whether it should be stapled or having a front and back side. And I think for a recruiter, because they have dozens of papers, it might be helpful just to have the front and back like what was mentioned. And so just on the RTX side, right now we're hiring a lot of engineers for Collins and aerospace. So we're broken up into different sub-departments, if you will. But essentially, we're all RTX. It's a little funny how that works. I'm still a part of RIS, so heritage, as they call it. But I do see that we are receiving more. We're receiving more work on the Collins end. So I'm not going to be a recruiter at the SHIP event. I'm actually looking to pivot. I would like to expand into different industries. And so that's what I'm here for today.
Okay, good. which leads me to my next question that I originally asked Paul Montoya. But I'm going to see if we can get maybe Natalia, who's online. I know that you're a student, you're currently a student, but you're working. You started with computer science, and then you pivoted over to cybersecurity, which is not necessarily too far off from what you were doing. But at the same time, did you have to reformat your resume when you were going from one position to another? What's your take, or how do you advise somebody that wants to pivot, like Melissa indicated, to go ahead and showcase some of those transferable experiences with work experience? How do you reword some of the stuff that you actually did so that it makes more sense to pivot from maybe in this case for Melissa, from Raytheon to maybe another corporation? How would you do that? Any suggestions, Natalia?
Sure. So yeah, I switched from computer science to cyber a little bit early on. I had one internship under my belt that was more computer science focused. And I think pivoting to cyber, you made the point of like, it's pretty similar. It's cyber, a lot of people would explain is a subset of computer science. So it wasn't too challenging for me to kind of pivot in that way. I think what really helped me at the time I was with NIWIC doing my summer internship, and I just kept asking a lot of cyber questions and really made it known that I was interested in that. And so luckily enough, when I feel like when you show interest and that natural curiosity, um, people are always going to keep you in mind for whatever you're pivoting towards. So then the next summer I was selected for like a more cyber concentrated opportunity within NIWIC, and that's how I did the pivot. I think, not sure what you're pivoting into, but for me, I didn't have to change too much besides really highlighting my programming background, because that is also used in the cyber world. So um, my biggest piece of advice to sum it up, I think, is to really share your interests with as many people as you can, because as we all know, networking, if someone knows someone that's in that field or working in what you want to pivot into, they can definitely make those connections for you.
Awesome. That's great advice. And I'll definitely ask you a question, Melissa, after Mr. Mike Cruz speaks.
Yeah, just a real quick question. Natalia, when you were thinking about switching to a second career, did you take any additional classes or certifications to help you build up your resume toward that direction?
At the time, not necessarily, just because I was always told cybersecurity is kind of interesting in the sense that a lot of schools don't have cyber as a degree. Now you're finding that more and more. So you're always, for the most part, or especially at that time, you were going to be a computer science major and then eventually with a focus in cybersecurity. But that being said, there were some workshops I would attended also because I was so vocal on my interests. People like Lazaro and other professionals would give me the contacts of people in that field. So I was able to talk to people like Abby Veras, who was able to give me some advice as to how to break into cybersecurity. And she was the one that really highlighted what certifications I should be focusing on. Not to mention if you don't want to do a formal certification yet to try to test the waters, there's a website, and there's a bunch of websites, but there's a website called Udemy that has a bunch of courses, usually at a discounted rate. So let's say you do want to pivot, but you want like that one relevant coursework under your belt to try to break into that industry. I think that's a really good option too.
Awesome. Thank you, Natalia. So going back over to you, Melissa, what do you mean you want to transition so we can maybe tailor our responses a little more towards what you really need?
Right. Thank you, actually, for taking the time to do so. So currently, I work in the radiation department as an electrical lead. And so with that, my experience is more within the testing and creating test reports, keeping up with the schedule, that sort of thing. And what I want to pivot into is the energy/gas industry. For my resume, as much as I try to tailor it to the job description, when it comes to the interviews, what happens is that the recruiter, because I also have referrals along with submitting my application, usually the recruiters think of me as a more general applicant. So they don't really see how I tailored my resume to the job description, and they're having a hard time finding where I could fit in. And as much as I describe my skills as transferable as I believe they are, it just doesn't surpass, I guess, maybe their cookie cutter answers that they have set in order to pass me along to the next stage. Yeah, so that's where I'm at.
So you want to go from Raytheon being an electrical test engineer to another corporation that deals with oil and gas, from what I'm understanding. Is that correct?
Yes, and so specifically for the testing, it's radiation testing. So a lot of biasing within these environments of like destructive environments, which is it's a very niche department, and I guess it's not really well known, and maybe that's the reason why I'm having a hard time transitioning to finding how I can say this is considered field work, but just in a different atmosphere.
You also mentioned that you got some internal referrals off of that. Which companies, if you don't mind us asking, and when you actually get those internal referrals, are they hiring managers or just individuals that you know that work at the corporation that refer you, and the hiring manager does not see the resume and ask to speak to you? So your only first level of interview is with the recruiter, and then you don't get passed on to the next phase. So just questions.
Right.
Yeah.
So the first referral I received was from a hiring manager herself, and it was for Kimley Horn. I understand that there's a process, so she had to refer me to the recruiter, and so I got sent to just a regular recruiter, and then from there, so that's still in works. No feedback yet, but it's been about 3 weeks or so. And then for the other referral, this was an employee who works at the company, and they are a manager, but they're not a hiring manager. And so they just sent me to a recruiter, and that's where the recruiter, he was the one that actually had a more general sense of interviewing. Aside from Kimley Horn, they were pretty specific. Well, they were also pretty general, but they kind of knew the categories I would fall into in terms of being an electrical engineer. As for the other one, they saw that I had no oil/gas industry experience, so they just really couldn't put me anywhere unless it was engineer one, which doesn't even require a bachelor's degree. And mind you, I have a bachelor's in double E and then a master's in engineering management. And I've worked for about 4 years. Well, including my internship summers, 6 years at Raytheon, but 4 years as a new hire or full-time.
Okay, good. Thank you, Melissa, for sharing all that information. I see Natalia, you have your hand up, and then I believe Paul wanted to say something. So Natalia?
Yes, for sure. So a bit of a tip. In the past, when I attend the SHIP conference, I feel like I haven't been really preparing as much as I could as far as like looking into what companies I want to target. So a tip on here for Melissa also and whoever else is attending, on the SHIP app, there's a part where you can filter for attendees, like who's attending the conference, and this is everyone from professionals to students. So if you go on there and there's a search engine, if you put recruiter, it'll basically populate all the recruiters that will be attending and also show the company they're a part of. So, sorry. I think my plan of action is to basically filter all the companies I'm interested in and then connect with them on LinkedIn to see if I can get a pre conversation going with some of these recruiters to see if it'll make my time at ship a little easier and maybe skip right to the interview. And also I plan on leveraging AI to see, because sometimes you don't know exactly what all these companies do. So I was going to make a list of all the companies and see if it can tell me if there's roles for me in that company. So things like that I'm trying to do ahead of time, as opposed to what I've done before is just showing up with my resume and trying to land something.
It's a good strategy plan there, Natalia. Paul, you also had a comment, so do you want to share that, or do you want me to read? There we go.
Yeah, I just, she mentioned oil and gas. Chevron's obviously big in that. And Adriana Sandoval is one of the ship lifetime members, and she could definitely plug you into their ecosystem. She's usually at every conference. She lives in LA, so I'd imagine she'll be there this year. So the other thing I was going to mention is on the ship app, the companies are, as they get registered, they actually are showing up in the app. So if you click on their company name, you actually see the name of all the people that are going to be there. Like some companies have like 90 people. It's crazy. You can look them up on LinkedIn, connect with them, and get a jump start on the conference. Yeah.
Awesome. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for that. Lourdes, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on to that. Basically, for Natalia and what Paul was saying, like if you submit your resume to there's like a ship deadline. I think it was like October 11th or something. Those resumes are kind of handed to the recruiters, so they already start looking at some stuff. And then they might send you links before the conference saying, hey, we want to talk to you. These are interview booths or like times, select what works best for you. And then, like you said, connect on LinkedIn with them and send them a message being like, hey, I'm really interested in your company. This is my resume. Let me know if I can talk to you or something. Like, make that introduction happen now. And it's okay if they don't respond, they're busy, but at least you tried. Like what Natalia was saying about before the ship conference and all that stuff.
So one of the things that you also mentioned there, Melissa, you have already started that preliminary effort, and you are attending the ship convention. So great. You can thank you for attending Cafecito chats. This is great. So it shows that you are really interested in pursuing something other than what you're doing at this point. And one of the things that I encourage you to continue doing is, reaching out and making sure that you have those conversations, those connections, like indicated with Adriana Sandoval. Maybe you look her up in LinkedIn and say, "Hey, Paul Montoya referred me to you. Is it possible that we can connect? Is it possible that you can review my resume?" And share with her some insights of, I need oil and gas experience, but I work at Raytheon and I really love to, jump into the oil and gas industry, and at least share with that individual what positions you see at Chevron or whatever that industry that they work in is, and make sure that you can say this rec number actually matches or interests me, and this is something that I would really love to work in. And make sure that when you say that, you can definitely say, I attempted to tailor my resume to this particular position. Can you look at it and give me some feedback? Because you're in that particular industry, and I would love to be part of that. And you never know, they might actually help you out. They might give you some feedback, and it could be a beneficial opportunity for you. So, Mr. Mike Cruz, you have your hand up, sir?
Yeah, just real quick to enunciate that point. When you research out a company, look at what opportunities are there. You may not know what they're offering or what's available within that country. Like Natalia, you go to gas and electric. If you have a computer or engineering background, you need to find and see if there's aspects of that whole company, not just the baseline, but see what peripheral activities that they need support in. And so the key here is, and we said it, you need to know the company, not just, on the top. You need to dig down in the company and see what they're actually involved in doing. A lot of times computer things pop up or engineering things pop up that you never suspect that company had an involvement in. So do your research on the company and do it wide and deep.
The other thing is, you did mention that some of those opportunities, they told you that they might have to drop you down just because of the experience. As hard as it sounds, you're an electrical individual, and if you want to get into the oil and gas, and maybe it's not apples to the recruiters, if you really want to get into that field, you might have to take a step back. And that means getting a little bit of a salary cut. I know it sounds harsh. That's my perspective. If you really want to get into that industry, into that market, and God only knows if you actually do well, if you find it, and if something really pops out at you and you do really well, and you say, you know what, this is my field. Maybe within 6 months they see your worth, your value, and they say, hey, you know what, we're gonna promote you, and you get back up to whatever salary you were when you transitioned over. Obviously, your current position, you probably have a salary and an expectation, which is great. But at the same time, if it's not the same field, you might have to be flexible and adjust to some additional salary. This is just my personal opinion. I don't know if anybody wants to chime in and provide some insight into that regard. I know saying a salary cut is very hard to digest nowadays, but it is what it is if you really want to transition over. Lourdes, you have a comment?
Yeah, I wanted to add to that comment, like, is there a conversation where you can start, like, I'll start engineering too, based on my experience, learn really quickly, reevaluate after 6 months, like, is there a path that way? Kind of something like what you're saying, Lázaro. It does take a very, like, an industry to be like, okay, let's see if this works, because it's an investment in you and it's your investment in them as well. But it could work. You just have to have that conversation as well, you know? I think it's worth it. The worst they can say is like, no, we don't do that or something. But
Right. But I'm pretty sure that if you throw that up front with the manager, say, hey, if this is a salary I'm willing to accept with the condition of, if within 6 months reevaluate and see if my value and my worth is more, and possibly pursuing that. Or as Natalia alluded to, once you're in that particular position for 6 months, you can definitely say, I have this under my belt. I can definitely go ahead and revamp my resume, say that I worked at Chevron, ExxonMobil, Solar Turbines, whatever oil and gas industry you're targeting, and maybe say, okay, I'm really targeting this additional position with this other oil and gas industry, and now I really want a higher salary for a level 2, level 3, and that's what you go with, right? Because at this point, you're going to take, quote unquote, a pay cut, but at the same time, I know you're in California, you don't have to disclose your salary to the individuals when you're applying. You can definitely request a salary. And now with that particular experience, you can say, hey, this is the salary that I'm making. This is the salary that I want. And you can definitely negotiate in that regard. And that might add value to you for having taken that route. And even though it's going to set you back for maybe 6 months or a year, now you have that additional experience that you needed to get into the oil and gas industry. So that way your resume looks a little stronger in that regard, and you can definitely navigate those obstacles in that sense. I don't know if that helps you, Melissa. Any thoughts or questions or comments in regards to what we've said so far?
Oh, it helps extremely. Yes. Thank you all to everyone for your input, and I will follow through. Thank you. Really, I have been doing a few of those things. It's different, pivoting. I've never done it before, but it's cool knowing that it's possible, and there's a lot of work to do for it. But as long as you're willing, then it's definitely possible. Thank you all.
Or even Raytheon, within Raytheon, you do have a master's. So maybe it's in electrical engineering, or maybe it's engineering management, which is more of an MBA business type of master's. So if you want to stay in the technical field, that might be something that you want to highlight and say, hey, I'm pursuing a project management opportunity. So regardless of whether I'm a electrical engineer, project management is project management, and you can highlight that. And that means that you don't have to take a pay cut. But if you want to stay in the technical aspect, being an electrical person, you might want to, once again, consider going back to school. while still in Raytheon, do a master's in mechanical, and that will definitely put you more in the spectrum of I can transition now to oil and gas with the same salary range expectations that I have, quote unquote. But at the same time, that's something that you have to evaluate for yourself. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay, with that being said, so resumes, are they important? They're still really important, and I think a lot of corporations still look at them. Paul Montoya earlier was mentioning that we could do more human, personable resumes, which is true. You can definitely add your picture. There's a lot. In the past, I was told do not add pictures, don't add your address, don't even try to be cookie cutter so you don't get discriminated against, right? Now, with the surge of online social media, LinkedIn, anybody can look at you and anybody can definitely see who you are as an individual. So, that being said, should you add a picture and should you add, I've seen even some individuals actually have a business card that actually they pass around with they call it the .com card or whatever, and you can definitely scan the QR code or the recruiter scans the QR code and it takes you to their either LinkedIn or whatever GitHub or whatever website where they actually have an expanded resume of sorts with videos and or additional documentation or reports or things that you actually published that you have online. So that's available too, and you could use that. Gualberto, you have your hand up, sir?
Yes, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
So I applied that aspect of making it more personal without necessarily adding my own picture.
Mhm.
I actually printed my portfolio of the different projects. So I studied undergraduate electrical engineering. So I graduated this past December, and I started at Northrop in February. Sorry. I actually didn't go to SHIP. I went to GMIS
Great
in
Minds
Pasadena
System.
this past year, and actually that's how I got the position. I used that to get in contact, or when I spoke with the recruiter, I had my physical resume, as you mentioned, the cookie cutter block type of resume, but I also had pictures of my portfolio of all the different projects I had done, whether it was in courses or on my own personal time. And what I did is rather than going into the resume, here's the visual. Everything you see on paper with words, you can see with visual. I'm a very visual person, and you can't do that past a QR code or anything because you might have a couple minutes to just start a conversation. So I think pictures and images which is very important for documentation for your projects, also works out to kind of advocate for yourself. So I don't know if that's something that Paul mentioned to do on the back of the resume to be able to put maybe some images of your projects, if that might make it more personable as opposed to, let's say, your personal picture.
Oh, that's a good insight. So in your portfolio, your little portfolio where you have your resume, I mean, obviously you have your resume, you can print out a couple pictures of some of the projects and quickly share them and highlight with the recruiters. This is me, this is at my school, this is the project that we were doing, this is me running an assessment or diagram or some sort of FMEA analysis on the computer and or welding or test driving, troubleshooting, whatever project you might be doing, right? So that might be something that you can quickly do. That's great insight, Gualberto. Any thoughts? And you have your hand up, Paul. Comments?
Yeah, so I'll tell you a quick story. Resumes. Well, two stories. One is last year, I'm the first one in the job fair. I got I got the golden ticket. I actually gave away a few golden tickets. I found them in the war room, but that's a different story. Had no idea those existed. But so I was the first in line at the IBM booth, and I did not think I was going to be handing out resumes. I was part of a layoff with Dell, so I was handing out resumes, and I just found myself dumbfounded. You know what I mean? At that SHIP conference, just sitting there, before all the students come in, watching the recruiters huddle up, talking strategy and, the calm before the storm, so to speak. I didn't have the guts to talk to anybody because I didn't want to cheat, before the job fair was open, to talk to them. But I just kind of walked around, got the lay of the land. And then they opened up the job fair. Everybody flooded in. And I'm standing at the IBM booth. I'm like, okay, this is great. I let a few people get in line first. So I'm like number 3 in the line. And so I had an opportunity to talk to these students, right? The people that stood in line for who knows how many hours and was first in line. And IBM's the first company they talked to. And I said, hey, how's it going? What's your, so I was talking to the students as they were in line instead of talking to IBM. And I remember talking to a student and I go, hey, what's your resume? Oh, I'm looking for quantum computing. I go, oh, wow, quantum computing. Is that why you talk to IBM? Okay, tell me more. And she's telling me about her dream job, what she's going after. And then I say, let me see your resume. And I'm looking at it. I go, you mind if we exchange? I'll give you mine. You give me yours and, and see how that goes. And then she's like, no, you can't have it. I go, what? Why not? She's like, it costs like $3. I have it on $3 paper. And then she goes into this rant on how the paper stock is super important to the resume handing out. And I was just shocked because I was like, I go, you really think so? And yeah, her resume was on some really nice paper, but to actually think, that's that was her belief, and probably the belief of a lot of people that the stock, the paper stock is that important. And so that was story number 1. Story number 2 is back to when I was talking to the ship chapter the other day at ASU. I told them, I go, at the end of the day, here's the deal. You want to talk about high school? Fine. Put high school on your resume. You want to talk about your work last summer for 2 months at Burger King? Fine. No problem. Put that on your resume. But be advised, anything on your resume is free game. You're putting stuff on your resume that you want to talk about, the things you're proud of, things that will showcase you. And then I made another suggestion because we started brainstorming and I started going down this rabbit hole. And I said, okay, here's the deal. I go, you walk up. I go to the recruiter. What are you going to do? They're like, oh, I'm going to hand them my resume. I go, why? Did they ask for it? No, they didn't. So why are you handing it to them? I told them I was trying to educate the students that you walk up and these people are people. They put their pants on one leg, just like one leg at a time, just like the rest of us, and treat them as such. Hi, how's it going? How's your day? Are you enjoying the conference? Are you getting a good ROI on the event? Do you think it's getting you, the candidates you want to look for? Have a conversation. Treat these recruiters like human beings. And then we got into ChatGPT and we had all sorts of fun. We asked ChatGPT to give us sample questions for this, sample questions for that, icebreakers. Give me the question in less than 5 words. We were going nuts with this type of thing. And the third strategy I was working with the students is you got to go in there. You got to change your attitude. Where do you want to work? I want to go anywhere. That's not a good answer. So you want to go to Boise, Idaho? And no offense to any Boise, Idaho people out there. They're like, oh, no, probably not Boise. I say that because I worked an internship at Boise and Hewlett-Packard, a really small town. I'm from a big city, Phoenix. I like big cities. We want things to do. LA, New York, Chicago. So I said, you have to put some thought into where you're going. The person you're talking to can help you, but you can't say anywhere because anywhere is a lot of places. So, yeah, I'd like to stay in the Southwest. I like it warm weather. My family's from here. I want to stay there. So you gotta walk up to the recruiters. You have to do your homework. And we're at an age where you have ChatGPT, you got the SHIP conference app, you have these type of calls leading up to it. You have an infinite amount of disposals. So by the end, this was an hour and a half. We are having this conversation. By the end of this meeting, I was talking to a mechanical engineering senior and I had him convinced. I go, you're going to walk up. There's 200 companies. How many offers are you interested in getting? He's, I'll be happy with one. I go, no, just got to change the attitude. You talk to 200 companies. Your goal is to get 200 offers. Mic drop. And that's the attitude you go in with. They need us more than we need them. You go in with that attitude and you will be successful. I told them, I go, you're already there. I go, your life is like this long. I go, do what Arnold Schwarzenegger and Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan and everybody else does. They all have the same thing in common. Visualize the end game. Visualize where you are at the end of your life and just fill in the gaps. And that's all we're doing. You remember the time I went to the SHIP conference and I was looking for a job and I was desperate saying anything? Yeah, those days are over. Right, Mike?
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I see we have Lourdes. You had your hand up. I believe it was you. Lourdes?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Paul said, like, make a genuine connection, ask them how they are, but also just like you can bond over random hobbies and that's how they remember you. Like Paul was saying about a picture, or just like taking the time to be after the conference, send them a thank you for talking to me message and be like, just so you know, I talked to you and I'm really interested in this, you never know what's going to happen. But if you send that thank you message, it makes you stand out already as well.
Thank you, Lourdes. Yeah, so that point being said, when you leave and you actually shake hands and say goodbye to the recruiter or to the hiring manager, don't leave without their contact information. If you have to write it down, have a pen, one of their pens handy, and just write it down in a notepad or even in the back of your resume that you still keep or whatever it is, or on your phone, or scan their LinkedIn QR code, but leave with something that belongs to them where you can actually communicate back with them and do exactly what Lourdes said. Send them a thank you email or a follow-up message saying thank you for the opportunity, and remember something specific about the conversation that you had. If you talked about chat gpt with them, going back to Paul Montoya's comment that he brought up, or even if it's a trip that you took to Boise, Idaho, or if you took a trip to Colorado, just make sure that you highlight that you had that conversation with them and they remember, oh, okay, that's that individual. They might not remember your name, but when they see the email, they're like, oh, okay, that's that person that I had a conversation with. And make that impactful. Use it to your benefit, right? They might get you through to the next phase of the interview. And also with the interviewers, when you're interviewing at the convention, it's going to be really loud. It's really, really loud. So make sure that you speak up and that you project your voice, because if they're people our age, it's a little bit hard to hear and to make out some of the sound. So for those a little bit more reserved in speaking, make sure that you project. And if you have to practice with some individuals when you do the mock interviews, resume reviews that are going on at this point in a lot of colleges, within a lot of corporations, attend those and make sure that you have that ability to speak up and make sure that you say, hey, is my voice tone, my volume, is that sufficient? Can you hear me well enough? And practice that. As mundane as it sounds, it's really interesting to see people nodding their head but not really hearing what the heck everybody's saying. So they don't really know who you are and they don't really hear much of the information that you're sharing. They only have the resume to go by. So make sure that you have your resume. Make sure that you have several copies of your resume. Go back and say, hey, is a picture suitable for my needs? And if I'm going into the DoD, is this something that the DoD actually looks at? Is this, maybe it's out of the ordinary, but if you hand them a picture resume, they might say, oh, we don't really take those, but say, hey, this is my person resume, and here's my professional resume, and just flip it over or give them another page. There was a comment in the chat about, should we staple resumes? And that means that you have more than one page. So going back to Paul's comment, the recruiters are human beings and they've been standing there for hours and hours talking to more than one or two or three people online, on the line, in person. So when they see a two-pager, they might have to scan it or take pictures. And if they have to flip and fold a paper, they might say, you know what, this has a lot of information. I don't really want to fold it. So some of that information might get truncated. So you only get the first page and the rest of the information gets lost, right? The other thing is, if you only have one page, my suggestion is put page 1 of 1 at the very bottom, so at least they know how many pages they're looking at, and they know, okay, it's only one pager. That might not be necessary for a lot. So also know the industry you're targeting. If it's a more conservative industry like the DoD, corporations, you're gonna be better off with a cookie cutter type of resume. If it's more of the Google, more of the Facebook, you might get away with putting a picture, putting QR codes and whatnot, because they're a little more liberal with and flexible with the formatting. But the DoD, Department of Defense, corporations, they're more conventional, more conservative, more straight through, and you'll definitely see less of those flashy, fancy resumes. And the recruiters will definitely not take too kindly to some of those flashy resumes, to be honest with you. As far as the stock of paper, I don't think honestly that matters too much. I know that some of the career services in the past for years have said stand out as much as possible, make it a little heavier cardboard paper, more expensive resume, but also take into consideration the recruiters actually grab some of those resumes and they have to scan them in. And if they put a bunch of them in and the scanner gets jammed, your resume is going to be in the blacklist because they're going to say, I can't scan this easily. So that might be an issue with those particular resumes. When you actually go into an in-person career fair like the SHIP convention, yes, you might want to do the stock, hard stock, cardboard type of resume, but give it to the recruiter. Not the recruiters. Give it to the hiring manager. The hiring manager might be better suited because they collect more individual resumes and they actually like to keep track of their resumes of people that they like. So maybe the recruiters give them your standard thin sheet, 8.5 by 11, regular white paper so that they can scan it or do whatever they need to do with it. But those are the pieces of advice that I have just in general for resumes. The formatting, as we heard, is very generic. You can have different types of formatting. Accommodate yourself to whatever format works best for you. Have several formats available. And when you actually speak to some of those recruiters, test the waters and see what works best for them and the type of industry that they work. And now, going around the room, any final comments, Mr. Cruz? Okay, Paul, any final comments?
No, just to, for those of you attending the conference, jump in that conference and start networking, start data dumping those, focus on those companies you're going after. So, and good luck.
Thank you, Paul. Great. Walberto, any final thoughts? Yes, sir.
I just had a quick question in regards to resumes. This may have been mentioned earlier, but are objectives or anything of that sort something that's outdated now at the top of the resume?
So you mean like a summary statement, summary paragraph, and or objective? That's what you're asking?
Correct.
I believe it depends on the industry. I know for DoD, for entry-level engineers, we still look at the objectives, and the human resource recruiters actually do take kindly to those objectives so that they can quickly say, okay, this individual is interested in one entry-level position or internship, and or are they a level 2 engineer, and what field are they looking to fill in that regard. So that's for an entry-level engineer or for an intern looking for a position. For more senior level engineers like managers and directors, that's a different type of resume that you would be considering. So you wouldn't necessarily have a standard objective. It would be a little bit different format. But for you, I'm assuming you're an entry-level engineer or an intern at this case. Am I correct?
Yes, I'm 6 months in at Northrop in Baltimore.
Right. So if you really want to go ahead and look for a position, you're still considered an entry-level engineer, I would still consider you having an objective statement very viable. It's particularly in the DoD. Once again, it's a very conservative field. We haven't evolved too much from the resumes of the 90s, to be honest with you. And that's what recruiters or talent acquisition individuals still look for. And they really, really want to glance at that within a 10-second, 30-second rule. So having an objective really gives them an opportunity to cut down on whatever time they need to figure out, why are you handing me your resume? So that's my personal observation and opinion. I hope that helps you, Alberto.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, got it. Any additional comments, Paul? I saw your mic go up. Maybe yes or no?
We're all salespeople at heart, right? So I just wanted to throw it out there that the last couple of years, Dell had not been attending the conference, and this year they are. Okay. They're going to have a little booth, and they have this. They have Dell's a big company. They bought EMC, which is where my first job out of college in 04 was with EMC. They bought EMC in 2016 and spun off Dell Technologies. So in terms of the vendor side, big bad vendors, it's Hewlett Packard, it's IBM and Dell Technologies. And Dell Technologies, if you're interested in going into sales, they have a nice associate training program. It's called the Next Gen Sales Academy. And Dell, you come out of that program, you're 25, 26 years old, you're an account manager for small, medium-sized business and Dell enterprise customers potentially. And boy, I found out late in my career that, we always used to laugh at the finance and business majors in the liberal arts college, but they sure do have the last laugh because they're our bosses and they run this and they run corporate America. So if you're customer facing and you want to kind of change it up and use that engineering technical background and jump into sales, that Next Gen Sales Academy is a great plug.
Awesome. Thank you, Paul. Any final thoughts or questions, Melissa?
No, not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Natalia, any final thoughts, questions?
No, I think I said basically all my tips at the moment.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah.
Lorenzo, are you recording these meetings?
Yes, I am, sir.
Do you have a repository of your things?
I do. I put them on YouTube and also on Spotify. So you'll see that.
If you get a chance, share the link. I want to.
Of course.
I want to keep advertising. You're doing good work here, buddy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, with that, thank you so much. This has been a great, insightful Cafecito Chats. Very quick, very straight through, and hope everybody got benefit from this. And we'll see you next Wednesday. Have a good one. Hasta luego. Bye bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Thank you, guys.
Have a good time.